Welcome to the panel where founders talk about building a better business and a better life. I'm Justin Jackson, co-founder of Transistor.fm.
And I'm Brian Castle. I'm founder of Builder Methods.
And I'm Jordan Goff, co-founder at HeyRosie.com.
And we have a special guest today. Brian, Jordan, and I are just going to pretend that Jason's just one of the boys. But inside, we're all like, this is Jason Cohen. Jason Cohen, founder of WP Engine, and one of just the best thinkers about business. Good to see you, Jason.
That's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited about like the smart list style kind of a surprise guest thing. Jordan and I both didn't know that Jason was coming on until about 2 minutes ago. So we're psyched.
That's right. Normally Justin would like hype it up with clues.
Yeah.
And we would have to guess who it is. And I bet we could have done that.
Well,
yeah, Jason, I've appreciated so much of your thinking and writing. I really have a problem with you around that maximum MRR formula, though, because at some point a few years ago, I was trying to figure that out, and it was very relevant to my business, and it was one of these things that you don't like to confront, but you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
for
kind
sure.
of Jason's game. He brings up stuff that...
the hard truths that you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
Maybe even in the moment, especially when I'm talking to people face to face in the moment, they're like, that was really harsh. I didn't like you right then. But then later I was like, you're the only person in the whole day that told me the truth.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I like that at least. I don't want the truth, but
Consolation.
That's what people need.
Yeah.
Jason, maybe just give us an update on what you've been doing
Sure.
for the past few years.
And just to apologize for the surprise visit, what actually happened is Justin messaged me like 3 days ago. Hey, we're doing a show and it's relevant to you because we're quoting something you said. Do you want to come on? And then I didn't look at Twitter for days. So a couple hours ago, I was like, sure. So that's why it's a surprise. It's my fault.
That's how we do it here. We don't plan. We just spur the moment.
Yeah. So that's okay. We can improv. I actually left Smart Bear about 2 years ago. I've been there for 15 years.
Sorry,
so
a
it's
Smart
not
Bear
like,
or WP
WP
Engine?
or sorry, it's WP Engine. I said Smart Bear. That's how long it was. I left WP Engine about 2 years ago. I've been writing a book, which is now on pre-order. I'm not here to push the book. That's not why we're doing this. So I'll let Justin push it at some point.
Hey,
just to
I will
prove that
push
I'm
the
not
book
pushing it.
all you want.
It's not the point.
It's called Hidden Multipliers.
Oh, look at that. You have pulled up and everything. Okay, so if you go to hiddenmultipliers.com, there it is. There, I did the pitch. So, so it's funny. We were just talking before the show. I think when founders or executives leave, they always have an excuse, and the typical excuse is, I'm leaving to spend time with my family. Because who can argue with that? It sounds great. Everyone goes, oh, that's so noble. And then they leave, and then 3 weeks later, you read, so-and-so's been appointed the senior vice president of sales of North America and you're like, wait a minute. That was not a lot of time with your family, dude. And so I was really sensitive to that. So when we were talking about it internally, I was like, look, there's nothing wrong, nothing bad. It's just been 15 years. It's just time. Like, I just want to rest a little. I'm older. My daughter's about to go to college. I want to go visit colleges with her a little bit. But like, it's just mostly, it's been a very long time. It's just simply maybe time for the next thing, whatever that is, which is not another company. I said at the time, I'm not starting another company. Here it's 2 years later. I have not started another company. So there you go.
Well done.
Yeah. Not that anyone believed that at the time, but there it is. But what's ironic is I have spent a lot of time with the family. We've been traveling a lot for college and taking vacations every second we can. And so the truth is I have spent more time with the family, but that's not what I said.
Dude, that sounds amazing.
Hey, job well done.
I'm curious to hear where your interest has gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun playing with Claude Code, especially stuff that like both the coding of it, but also the running your whole life. Or I think it's interesting as since I'm writing a book, it's interesting to ask, how can AI be helpful but not write the book? Like the only reason people read what I write is because it's my experiences and ideas and my writing style also. So AI can't do any of those three things, but that doesn't mean it's not helpful. So, for example, I have a skill just to find typos and things, which is, obviously that's a good idea. But also things like when I'm using a word slightly incorrectly. So, for example, I would use this phrase, I would say blah, 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 but that begs the question, blah, 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 like some next question. And it flagged that, like, that's not what begging the question means. I think what you mean to say is that raises a question, or, right? Begging the question is actually this philosophical fallacy which is when you implicitly assume the thing you're proving and then prove it with itself.
Really?
But you've secretly done that, so you're begging the question, and so that's not what you're saying. Like, oh yeah, obviously I was confused about that. So typos, but also this kind of careful word usage. So that's a great use of AI. So this skill has been very helpful to me. But again, that's not writing the book for me. That's like a smart copy editor or something. So there's other ways, but that's been very interesting.
I'm really interested to hear about your whole content process, like definitely for the book, but also just like over the years you've been, such a prolific writer through your blog and Twitter and everything. I've always been really impressed with that, and I've always wondered about how you produce get your thoughts into such digestible form on such a consistent basis. I mean, on my end, I'm really going deep on that. I do a ton of content writing, especially writing scripts for YouTube, and I am going deep on using AI in the process for that. So I'm really curious to hear how that's evolved for you, especially over the last 2 years.
Well, so I've been writing for almost 20 years, as you know, and fortunately never for money, never trying to make and so I've been able to do whatever I feel is best for me. So I've had a rule from the beginning that it's supposed to be fun. And so, for example, I have no deadlines ever for anything. And so sometimes I've had years where I publish every week like clockwork, and years where I publish once or twice only the whole year. For whatever reason, I don't have the energy, I don't have the time, I don't want to. It's whatever. So as a result, I've been able to keep the quality high because I'm allowing things, like you said, consistency. When you said that, I thought I'm not consistent at all. I post very randomly, but as a result, things like the craft or the style or the ideas, or the consistency of whether the idea is good enough, I've been able to keep up because I let things like deadlines, not drive things. And of course, for algorithms, that's bad. And so a lot of people say you should have 10 times the number of followers on Twitter or on the blog. I don't know. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but I'm just not going to do that algorithm stuff because again, I just have a different set of constraints that I'm running under, but it allows me to have the quality, at least to the best of my own ability, whatever that is. And so for anyone who likes that, then good.
I do love the idea of lack of deadlines. I'm always really curious about what the life cycle of every, so if we see something come out on Twitter from you or an article drop from you, what was the lead up to that? How many days of development? How many drafts? How do you get to the point of this is ready to hit publish?
Yeah, nothing's real time. Like even the Twitter stuff, that's all buffered up. And so a lot of times I'm surprised myself. Like, oh, I wrote that 9 months ago. I mean, my buffer is deep. I'm not even joking. And with one of the nice things,
it does look that way from the surface. I assume that there must be some sort of queue, right?
It is a massive queue. And what's nice about being so ahead of the queue like that is I can say things which in the moment, I wouldn't, if I didn't have such a deep queue, there's things I wouldn't have said because it was so close to the moment that the person or event or thing I'm talking about, they would know, or other people in their team would know. And that's the last thing I ever want to do to anybody, right? Like it's nice to say, here's something I observed or a lesson. Very bad if I'm calling out someone, even by accident, right? Or at least I say, right, that's just my attitude. But if there's a 9-month queue, and I write that, there's no chance you could leak, anyone, even people deep in the thing, they could maybe think, oh man, was he talking about that thing from a year ago? But that's so vague that at some point, it's just my experience. I have to relate it. So, or I don't have to, but it makes sense. So it's actually great because I can say more things than I might have otherwise said without worrying about how I may be affecting other people in that particular sense. The posts, I have literally hundreds of posts in drafts, some of which are like an idea in one sentence and some are long things. I'm just not feeling it or I just, not feeling the editing or maybe the idea is not good enough yet or something. And of course, most of them will never work. And so it is, again, kind of sporadic. Sometimes I'll just have an idea and bam, I write the whole first draft, in one sitting, and then all it needs is editing. And then other times, and so even so, that'll be hours because I go over it and I edit it a lot. I want to find every problem. I want the style again. I'm not just trying to put out something. So, is this written well enough? Is it structured well enough? That sort of thing. Are the examples good? And of course, what's too long and all that. So it still will take a lot of time in editing, but sometimes the original's fast, and sometimes the whole thing gets rewritten a bunch. There's one people like a lot that's called the elephant curve, Well, it's
Mm-hmm.
called The Elephant in the Room, but it's about the elephant curve, which is just a name I came up with for this particular idea. That one is very long and has a million graphs and data points because I have this thesis about how growth works, or how exponential growth doesn't work, you might say. And I have this thesis about like, here's how growth works and why. And then I back it up with like the zillion data points from all kinds of companies, bootstrapped, venture funded, the biggest ones ever, old ones, new ones, and of course my own data. That one took 10 years
Mm.
because I had this idea that long ago. Like I published this, I think, in 2022, but I had that idea because I remember publishing it. Like I've had this idea for so long, and the reason there's so much data is that I had this idea and I never got around to like making it into some sort of thesis. But every time I saw another example, I'm like, God damn it, there it is again. And I would snag it and throw it in the file, So the file
Love it.
ended up being like I have 10 times, not 10, I have maybe 3 times as much stuff as what's in that article, even, right? Of like accumulated. And then finally, for no reason I can explain to you, I was just like, I had the bug, and I just, it's like, it's time to write this damn thing after all.
It's ready to get it
And I
out.
did, and so that's part of why it's so deep. So it can be like that too. I think so. So that's not. It's kind of a non-answer of like, what's my process? I guess the answer
No, I
is
love it. Yeah.
yeah. The answer is like different things just happen differently, and I allow that, and I don't worry. I don't sweat that. And a real professional writer cannot act like me. Right? Like if you need to publish every day, if you're writing for a newsletter, or even if it's for money, and so and you're getting paid $20,000 for an amazing article in the Atlantic, you still need to go like do that thing for a few months, or and so like since I don't need to, I have the freedom of that. But what that means is I can do my best work. I don't let it intrude. I cannot let it intrude on the rest of life. But that means I can be the best writer I can be, the best thinker I can be, put out the work that
Mm-hmm.
I'm most proud of. That doesn't mean it's all great necessarily. It's just that my best that I can do is that's why I keep repeating that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something everyone can adopt and do. Everyone can decide, oh, look, I'm not going to be a professional writer, but I would like to be the best thinker and writer that I can be without letting it intrude. In other words, you can take that attitude, and whether you call that a process or not, I don't even know, but you can do that if you want. And that's what I've done, at least.
One of the
Yeah.
things that jumped out to me when I mean, all of that, it seems like it makes sense as someone who's read your work for so many years. Like, but the thing that jumped out to me was the idea of having like maybe 100 half-written ideas at any given time. And I mean, I have a lot of ideas kind of like swirling around, but I tend to zero in on really only one or maybe two concurrently, because I have to ride the momentum. And if I only get it 25% or 50% and then I leave it'll be hard, if not impossible, to ever really come back to it and get it to a shippable state.
Yeah, I think that's what happens when it's this fragment of an idea that's not that good. And so it just doesn't feel worth finishing it. Because if it's something where you're like, I've figured something out. Now, again, this is just your opinion and your feelings. That's fine. But like, let's set all those things aside for a second, and or all those qualifications, and just assume that I've figured out something out. Maybe someone else has already figured that out, probably. But I nevertheless independently came up with it, which I'm very excited about. I'm very proud of. I'm really using this. To me, it's easier to even come back like, oh yeah, that was a really important idea, and I can like get re-excited. Another thing that happens to me sometimes is, like you say, halfway through, set it aside, and then 2 years later, I'll have the same idea and forgot that I already had that idea. Then I'll start writing it again, but then I'll find,
Mm.
oh, I have some of these ideas already, and then I'm like, wait a minute, let me take all that stuff together. Obviously, together it's not organized, but in this pile of things, is there some crisper, better way to say the root idea that's actually interesting? Um, Another fun thing is naming it. Like I've named a million things, never after myself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? But this Fermi decisions and or Fermi estimation and the bin stack and slick and we were just saying the elephant curve and all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I know this it's kind of silly, but also it's almost like, well, I have to finish explaining slick.
Mm-hmm.
Like as opposed to this like nameless, formless idea that's only half good, right? I feel like I have to explain the thing. So that may be a little trick, even if you don't use the name in the end at all, but it might be a trick for that. There's all these writing tricks. I'm sure you know them already, and it's so personal writing. So like there's no one trick that works for everyone, of course, but there's these tricks like, what is the central question that the reader has that this answers? I find a lot of times when I like get a half idea, I'm not interested. Like I also can't explain what that is. It's sort of like I had a half baked thought, but I can't really answer your question other than like a very boring answer. Whereas if I can answer that really crispy, like for my book, for example, this hidden multipliers book I'm working on now, the central question is, I'll be even more specific. I'm a bootstrap SaaS founder at 2 million in revenue, and growth has slowed, and I'm stuck, and I don't know what to do next. And I have a list of things I could do. I know that just doing what I'm doing won't work because that's what I'm doing, and it's not. It's like I have to do something else. I have a list of 10 things I could do. I don't know which one is really the thing that's going to break me out, and also maybe the thing that's going to break me out isn't on the list. Not even sure. So what do I do now? That is the central question and ideal customer, you might say, of the book. Because I can say that so crisply and I talk to people all the time like that, it's very motivating to me to like, yeah, I've got to show you things. Like, I don't know exactly what will work, but I've got to show you really good things that could work. We've got to get you out of this. So on a smaller scale, like a blog post, who is that for? What is exactly that central question? That can be motivating to like, yeah, I've got to tell them. Another trick is once you have that in your mind, you can do the thing where you just say it like I'm doing right now. You just verbally spew, of course, with AI turning your spew into a text. And often just talking aloud, you end up with something which you can now reform. And if you don't care so much about your own writing craft, of course, you can use AI and say, all right, I have this half-written thing. I have this spew of ideas. Like, let's first decide what kind of article structure makes sense. Like, is it like surprising thing, background context, here's the solution, and here's like a couple tips, which is a lot of mine, to be fair. Like, is that the right? And so you can work with the AI a little, or like, what's the right outline structure? And they're like, okay, we'll take all the shit I said and like sort of do that. And it won't be very good, but like maybe a lot, as we all know, editing's easier than writing from scratch. And so even if the AI produces something that's just okay, but it's structured fine, and then you edit literally every single word, that was still really helpful versus starting from your quarter done thing and some spew and being like, oh, I don't know. So I think that sort of thing is a way to leverage AI to get you past, let's say, a kind of writer's block. So anyway, these are just some ideas.
Yeah,
I
mean,
that's great.
It's really been interesting to because I've transitioned from really focusing on like SaaS for 10 plus years, and now my business is more of a content driven business. And I've been really focused on that, on all those things that we're talking about here. Like, and it's been interesting to map SaaS business concepts to the process of writing, like job to be done or ICP. Like who is the reader or the viewer of this thing, and what is the one idea or the one job or the one question this thing needs to answer. And when you're talking about like business content or technical content, there's so many branches that you can start to go down in any one piece. And it's like, well, maybe this should be separate pieces, or just stick to the one flame here.
You know that I have pieces like that are like, okay, this probably should be multiple articles. And sometimes I do write that. And actually, so here's a funny thing. I just thought of this because I forgot I did this. Sometimes I'll do exactly that. I'll be writing, and it turns out like, oh my gosh, of course the hole goes deep, and I can't cover it all here. What I'll do is I'll say, whatever, I'll still write this monster thing, but then what I'll do is I won't publish it, and I don't have to like polish it to death either. And then what I'll do is I'll look through, and then these are all ideas for me for other posts. And so whatever I'm kind of excited about, I've got a paragraph or two because of the root post. And then I'm like, okay, if I were to write this and I were to send the reader off to another post for details, what would that be? Now it's easier for me to focus on the one thing, because in my mind, I still have the full idea over here. So it's almost like I've given myself permission to go focus on the one thing. So I've had posts like that. In fact, the book I'm writing now was a post about what to do in growth stalls. That's the name of the post. And I had all these sections, and each section, it's like, oh my God, I could write a book about each one of these things. And I'm like, wait a sec. So I still have that in draft. So I literally have written an entire book, about 300 pages, in the technique I just said. That's how much I went into detail on each one. But
Wow.
yeah, and then sometimes you can publish the master or the main one, because the trunk, and you have all these links. And I have a couple posts like that too. The Kung Fu one is like that, and the actually the top one on the website right now is like that. The path to product market fit, except not really, because it's not a strict path, but here's a path idea anyway. And of course that thing is just nothing but links to other stuff. So that's another example of that. So yeah, writing and not publishing it, but using it for your own technique is good. So I mean, that sounds really useful to do. I think it's very different if, again, you're doing it for personal development and getting your ideas out there. You might even say legacy, although that's a big word, like me. Or or like you're saying, it's my business. I have to do certain things. I have these goals I need to achieve. Okay, well then I would use things like content calendars, maybe a little like the old version of content calendar is not right, but like maybe the idea that I'm going to be writing on different topics throughout a month and roughly what is the pace and schedule of that. And then how can I use AI because AI is good at stuff like what are a bunch of topics in this area, or what's an outline for something. These are kinds of things where AI is quite good. And so it's easy. Easy is the bad word, but it's possible to have a lot of ideas and things with some help. And then I think probably there's
I'm using
stuff to
AI
do with AI
heavily,
there.
and it's all. I mean, I'll spend the next hour going deep on that if you let me go on it. But anyway, Justin, what do you got?
Well, let's just change gears slightly because Jason's book is about when growth stalls. I know that Jordan has a take on this because it felt like all of Twitter last week was talking about distribution. It used to be developers. Now it's distribution. And Jordan, in chat, you said you had a little bit of a fiery take on this one. So what's your fiery take on this distribution is the new moat?
I don't know if it's a fiery take against the concept of distribution being a moat. I think my problem is in like the hand wavy, easy sayings that are thrown out and then interpreted by the reader in 100 different ways, or maybe 100 different readers 100 different ways. And I don't know how helpful it is to just hear distribution is the new moat. Like, okay, you want me to focus on distribution? Like, that's a word that stems into 100 different activities and strategies and channels and everything else.
Yeah, it's like, thank you, Captain Obvious.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. So you mean finding people that are interested in my product, showing them my offer, and then them buying is the new moat? Okay. I think really it's just a de-emphasis of the product's so unique because and that's my moat. Okay,
yeah.
fine. But
explain to me this meme you sent to me of the person on the treadmill. Like what's going on there?
The response to that tweet, someone I think quoted Lenny and said, "Okay, if distribution is the new moat, then like get ready to run forever because you're just going to be marketing forever," which again feels to me like nothing new. So I think it just feels like that phrase is not helpful.
Yeah.
And what feels a lot more helpful is like what the founder is it Lemon Squeezy?
Yeah, J.R. Farr. Yeah.
Yes. And what he talked about is like, well, this is our moat is a set of activities that we do consistently over a long period of time that translate into an incremental set of like benefits to the company that over time add up to something really hard to replicate.
Yeah.
So here's how we do features. Here's how we turn every release into some form of a marketing event that has an SEO impact, that has a new surface area for people to interact with. And here's how we think about integrations and why we don't just launch an integration, but here are the set of things that we do alongside every integration. So it's not as pithy as distribution is the new moat, but it's doing founders and companies a much bigger favor. Yeah.
Jason, what's your take on this? All this conversation about distribution on Twitter. You're obviously writing a book on it. So what is distribution a moat? Is distribution the new moat in this world?
I agree with Jordan that the phrase, you read into it what you want and therefore it doesn't mean anything. And it's also not new. I mean, to the extent that distribution could be a moat, that isn't new information.
Yeah.
And to the extent that it's not a moat, the phrase is not accurate. There is a so in that sense, it embodies the very funny thing. I forget where this comes from. It's very old, but there's like a beginning of a paper or something, and it says, "There's much in this paper that is new and much that is true, but the stuff that is true is not new. And the stuff that is new is not true." So this reminds me of like, distribution as a mode is kind of an embodiment of that. Like, this is a nonsense thing. It's either not true or it's not saying anything new. So therefore so I think that's what Jordan was saying too. And I agree. I do think, So when I hear moat, I just think of Warren Buffett, of course, coined this phrase. And so I think of the Warren Buffett version of it, which is there's maybe you could have other ones. That's fine. That's just what I think of, which is that competitors cannot stop us from running the business we're running. To me, that's what the moat is. Now, you normally think of it as, you often think, and I've said it as a permanent competitive advantage. I think that's a fine way to say it. But if we're going back to the original thing, it's sort of that it's not even an advantage. Oh, it is. It's that a competitor can't stop me. Because he said, I want a company that's a castle with a moat with lots of alligators and stuff so that no one can storm the castle. Which isn't quite the same thing as saying that we have some sort of unique advantage over others. You might say it the other way. Having a unique advantage over others could be a moat. But, a moat isn't it, right? So in that sense,
can you tell us how that manifested itself at WP Engine? Like why could nobody stop you from doing what you were doing?
So many competitors.
Yeah. We had the reputation of we're the most expensive and also the best. A lot of people don't want the most expensive and don't need the best. In fact, most people don't. And I agree. And that's why GoDaddy is a great business because for $3, you can get a lot. Like what you get for $3 is insanely good. Like the ROI of GoDaddy is insane. So that's fine. So like they have that. Someone else could also be expensive and good, but that can't stop us from being expensive and good. And it can't stop our reputation for being sort of first and best in that category. So in that sense,
is reputation the key phrase there? Like, is reputation the moat?
So again, like I guess I go back to what Jordan says. Are these useful things to say? If you have a social media channel, no one else can stop you from having a good one. And so even if they have a good one, you can probably still do really well. On AdWords, it's not true. You can have a really good AdWord, but if 10 other people are better, then you're just not shown, or it's too expensive to have good ROI or whatever, right? So in that sense, AdWords is heavily competitive. Social media, while competitive, and even a big company with lots of money and customers, they sort of can't stop you from having a better social media channel than that other company. But the big company can overwhelm you in AdWords, actually. They won't necessarily, like it's a fight. It's just that you can't, it's not like they could. Whereas with social media, there's kind of nothing the big, entrenched, mature, rich company can do to stop you from having a good social media presence. So in that sense, you have this unassailable advantage. And to me, that's this idea of a moat, is that you have this unassailable position. Now, just the social media channel, I wouldn't call that a moat. I'm just making a simpler example. So in business, it might be something like I mean, everyone says network effects. Okay, yes, because if someone else comes up with a better tool, they just can't stop the network effects. They can compete on features and try to steal people, and maybe they will. But what they can't do is lower the value of your network effects. Right? They can't do anything. They can't launch a feature that for that particular. So therefore, the network effect is a moat. So in that sense, is distribution a moat? Well, if you just run AdWords, then distribution is not a moat for you because you're doing things that are not only replicable. See, that's another thing. You think of it as being, can someone copy you? That's not what a moat is, right? Like if you have a network effect because you're a social media app, the next social media app also has a network effect. Of course they can copy that. It's not even the point. In fact, part of the definition of a moat probably is that even if they copy it, it's still a moat for you.
Yep.
It didn't help. So in that sense, like a lot of distribution is not a moat in that other people can in fact outdo you and beat you.
Yeah.
But if your distribution is good enough, then it can become a moat that can't be defeated. If you have a YouTube channel with 1 million subscribers, literally, that does seem like this kind of like forever is a big word, but let's say long-term advantage that no one can wrest from you. Everyone's just going to go, God damn it. And no matter what they do, here you have it. So I think distribution could be a moat so like another way would be once QuickBooks got the CPAs to use QuickBooks, now that's the distribution moat to getting to customers because the CPA will tell their clients, oh, use this because then it plugs into my thing. That's that sales system that's indirect through the CPA. That is a moat because no matter what you do on the outside, to sell directly those clients, it doesn't matter if their CPA says, no, use this. That is a distribution moat for sure. So again, so I would say some distribution if executed in a certain way, blah 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 blah, can become a moat. But just saying distribution is a moat, like I agree with Jordan. Like I don't know, I don't even know what that means.
Let's go with Brian, then Jordan.
You know, like reading through J.R. Farr's post here, and I'm such a fan of him and everything that they've built with
Lemon Squeezy.
With Lemon Squeezy. But as I was reading this, and I'm still going through it, so you know, for those who don't see it, it's like it's like a numbered list of what, eight or nine or 10, 10 different things that they've done to like run their distribution or things that like tactics that they worked on. But as I read through these, like especially items 1, 2, 3, and 4, like these to me all seem like natural byproducts of just product market fit, right? Like you have a product, and like so like item number 1 is like we're shipping constantly, and with every feature that they ship, they're doing tweets and blog posts and changelog updates and screenshots and videos. Like obviously, like just doing that is not really distribution. But if you have a product and there's a market demand for it, and then they're going to eat up that stuff and share it, and then turning product work into distribution is number 2, right? Like how do we package the work we're already doing into something discoverable? Again, like that, like the assumption or the reason why that works is that there is natural market demand for the product they decided to go for. Like scrolling down, there was like an item, where was it?
You've got obsessing over onboarding, making docs part of the product, integrations everywhere, founder-led content.
There's one about like the design. Who's the other partner in that?
Screenshots.
Yeah, the screenshots. Orman Clark did all the design for Lemon Squeezy, right? And his work is incredible. So again, like that's like product work, design work. It comes in the form of screenshots, which I'm not even a Lemon Squeezy user, and I always paid attention to the work they've done because it looks awesome, you know. And I'm liking their tweets and stuff like that. So, like to me, like I think it's a good point about distribution, but all this stuff to me seems more like great product, great market, great timing.
Jordan, what are your thoughts?
That just looks like good, disciplined work. Just doing the things you're supposed to be doing that take time and effort and systemizing them. And like, that's how you run a successful company.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think people get enamored, especially in the VC world and on Twitter, with media and the massive leverage that media can give you. And that's why you see the big like TBPN fawning over that type of distribution. And right, what's the opposite of JR's post? It is Cluely, and just using negativity and controversy to gain attention, and then trying to parlay that into some form of like a distribution advantage.
Interesting.
Yeah, in general, I think JR's advice is infinitely better, while taking whatever lessons we can from the fact that the focus is more toward distribution, because product differentiation might be it's different than it used to be.
Let's do a little speed round here. I'm curious. What do you think? We'll start with Jason, then we'll go to Brian, then Jordan. What do you think is Basecamp's moat? Start with you, Jason, if you have a thought.
To me, it's the very public personalities of the two founders. If you never had the 37 Signals blog that went alongside Basecamp, no one would use Basecamp.
Brian, what do you think their moat is?
I think that's absolutely true, especially in the early phase, or maybe you might even say like the first 10 years of Basecamp, and I'm sure it still has an effect. I think if the question is about like why does it work today in 2026 for Basecamp, I think it's their longevity, right? Like they've been around for so long that they have this customer base. They already have a well-known established brand, at least in some circles, probably many circles. And I think that flywheel is just well on its way at this point, you know?
Jordan?
I think they got the boulder up the hill with their very clear contrarian thinking and great marketing of that thinking that established a spot in the market where they just have their own space and people think of them in a unique way. And then once that boulder started rolling down the hill on the product, now the product fulfills the promise that they're making on the site, and it's unstoppable. It's beautiful.
I'd also push back a little to say that it is a moat. I've never met someone that used Basecamp I know
This is
now.
my point too.
I know a million people use Basecamp, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I could list to you a lot of other products that have 100 times the number of users. That's okay because that's not their goal.
Mm-hmm.
Their goal is not to be the biggest whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So their goal is not, in fact, their goal is explicitly not to become Jira, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a criticism. I'm just saying, like, let's put it this way. Let's say the team none of this existed. What happened is they vibe coded Basecamp to the point it is right now as a product, and then launched it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Would they re-achieve their market share in, let's say, 5 or 10 years? Or you got to give it enough time because of anything? Good marketing, the product's better, differentiated. No, because the product's not any of those things. It is a little different than others. Like, it's good. It's a great product. There's a lot of great products like that, though.
Mm-hmm.
Are you telling me people who already use Notion for that would switch away from Notion and to Basecamp, even though they could have done that for the last 10 years and didn't, just on the basis of the product? I don't think so. So, like, the product isn't differentiated,
Mm-hmm.
and it would not succeed now. And so it would just be another indie. I made a project management software. People say, yeah, there are some nice things about this, but I'm not going to switch to it, right? And so it isn't better. It's
Mm-hmm.
good, but it's not like there's nothing special there. That's why I go back to, like, it's the cult of the founders,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't know what else there is that would make it succeed. Now, with this cult of founders, could it succeed now? I actually think yes. We still love that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's gotten, because I think what's most attractive about Basecamp is the religion. It's like, I buy into the Basecamp religion, and what do I want? I want the Basecamp system. I want to feel like I'm a part of the Basecamp thing, that magic. Is that increasing or is that decreasing? Go ahead,
I
Brian.
think I want to push back on some. Maybe this is more of like a yes and, because I think all the branding and the personality of Jason and DHH, all that's true. We all know that, but I also think that a lot of that is like a little bit insider baseball for those of us in these industry circles. And if I think about their customer base of thousands, there is something to be said for their product design. Like, it's true that most people we know probably aren't using Basecamp because it is too simple, it's too constrained. They've decidedly gone a much simpler route from a product design standpoint, making it very like human and just no nonsense. Just if you need to write some text in the box, press send. Like, that's the UI. It's simple, right?
Mm.
And like there actually have been times where, yeah, I've been using Notion for years, but it is too complicated. There are too many things you can do with it. I want the constraints. I want the guardrails of something simple. And I think that the average small business owner who picks up Basecamp, it's like, okay, this thing just works. It makes my business simpler. Like, and I think that's what they're going for in their marketing copy, you know?
But how would the average business person discover Basecamp?
That's the question. I think today is probably a combination of organic, word of mouth, search. You know, I probably less of like, oh, I liked that opinion of Jason Fried. I would think that the majority of their customers.
But if they were starting over, but they had this product. The product is the product of today. They get that. And they're starting over. And they're not allowed to use their personalities because we're assuming, would it achieve the success it has today?
Oh, it would be way harder and probably not. Yeah.
Unlikely.
Yeah. That's all I'm saying. So that tells me it's not the product. Like, again, the product is fantastic. Like, that to me, that's not even a question. It's a good product. To me, it would just be like, right, it would be a good product among, let's say, 10 or 20 good project management things. Like I know way more people that use like a ClickUp or Notion or a conglomeration of other things, or Jira or Linear. Of course, that's a different space. That's, but like WordPress freelancers are kind of in the middle between these designer, project manager type things and writing code and stuff. So they kind of flit around between all that, for example. Like with Linear, it's much easier to point to this is their specific theory and philosophy. And so if you subscribe to it, it is the best product on earth for that. And so the question is that market big enough and can they find it? And the answer turns out to be yes. But like, I can really point to that. Whereas with Basecamp, it's simple. There's other simple ones but it's really good. I know, so is other things. Like, it just doesn't, I don't know
Yeah.
why.
There's probably a
some
timing
people
aspect
would
of it
pick
too,
it, but
right?
that's
Like,
not a moat. Just that some people would pick it is not a moat, right? Like the moat is like it's unassailable. With linear, it's like they're so extreme in their philosophy and they're so far ahead in the specific things they value that I don't see how someone catches up to it. Even if they tried to copy it, they're just too far ahead.
Mhm.
I guess
And
that also begs the question of like, how do you start? How should, like, let's say SaaS founders, SaaS startup founders think about starting up something new now? I mean, like even like with Basecamp, if the question is like, would it succeed today, or how could it succeed today? I think the question is like, well, if you're deciding to start a general project management app today, you're in the wrong year to do that. The year to do that was 2008, 2009, 2010.
I would have said that about Jira, and Linear did it. So I 100% agree that if
Mhm.
you're going to do the same thing as everyone else, but 30% different, then I agree with you. No, but that's because there's no moat there, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But there is a way, but you have to do something different. It doesn't mean it has to be controversial or something, but you have to do something substantially opinionatedly different that appeals to people like Linear did. So it takes that amount to overcome. I completely agree.
I was going to say the word that we've avoided thus far is brand. And it does feel like that's a very important element to 37 Signals and Basecamp specifically. It's just that their personality and reputation is part of the brand, right? Alongside the design and the logo and the feel and all that. If we bring it down to today's issues, the distribution is the new moat. That comes out of an acknowledgement that it's really hard to differentiate on product. And if you do differentiate on product, it's much easier and faster to catch up to you. So, I mean, we're dealing with this right now. We have an AI voice receptionist. 18 months ago, there were like 5 of them. Now there are 500. So we are looking not only at our brand and how people think about us and the reputation, but also where the product goes and differentiates. But it's really hard to pick a differentiated product off the bat. It won't last for very long. It won't be differentiated for very long. So it feels like you do need to incorporate the brand and reputation element into it alongside all the other unique things that you're doing. I personally think that being a thought leader and leading with that is not right for us because our ICP are like these 1 to 10 person SMBs throughout the country. But we have a lot of more work to do beyond just the product being different or better.
Yeah. Well,
because we can't count on that.
This kind of segues into the reason I brought Jason on, which was this post here. Things mostly fail even at the best companies. So the thing I was thinking about is all the things we try, what works, what doesn't, and then what endures and for how long does it endure. So here's Jason's post. Things mostly fail even at the best companies. Most ad viewers don't click. Most of those don't click past the landing page. Most of those don't consider. Most of those don't buy. It's the rare wins that keep us going. A weird life if you think about it. Jason, maybe just to go to you, like what's kind of the thinking behind this one? What was the prompt? What got you interested in this piece?
A longer version of this is how I kick off one of the chapters of the book, which is a chapter about cancellation, because I've always had this feeling, and I try to put into words of like how impossible it is that anyone would buy the damn thing. Like, first you have to see your ad, which is already like what, 1 out of maybe if 1% of people see the ad that you expose it to, that's pretty good. Just order of magnitude, maybe it's 0.1, I don't know. And so then they clicked it. Well, what's click-through rates? 1%? That's good. Okay. Then they hit the homepage. And then what? 70% bounce, 90%? Depends on the source. Okay.
Yeah.
That means they spent more than like 3 seconds, like, right? And then they read it and they're like, "Oh, interesting. Really? Thank God. You're the first one today." And then they looked around and they didn't get bored, and they looked at the features, like, "Ooh, really? Thank God." And then they looked at the pricing page and they didn't just leave, They're like, "Oh, that's reasonable," or "It's not too low," and they think you're shitty, or too high and they think you're out of their league. And they looked at the tiers and they're like, I can do this. And then maybe they looked at competitors, maybe they didn't, but supposing they did, whatever, they still decided to buy from you. They got out a credit card and it worked. I mean, that's already something,
Yeah.
Like there's a fall off there.
Yeah.
And
a
then
series of miracles.
a series of miracles. And then they got in, and then what? they onboarded, they typed stuff in, they uploaded a photo of themselves for the 7 millionth time this week.
Like they dedicated all this time out of their life to the thing.
Maybe they called tech support to get unfucked, and like that. Then they, and also if it's at work, I'm usually thinking of a B2B context. Everything I just said is absolutely true in B2C. I just am expert in B2B and not B2C, so I always think that way. And so anyway, in a business context, they probably told their peers like, "Oh, you need to check out the software. I checked this out. It's really cool." Like they've started putting their own reputation on the line, and then after all of that, they cancel. And you're like, "What?"
That's what.
Like
that's
I
what kills
caught
me.
lightning in a bottle, and then you're like, nah. Like what? So to me, it's like you have to go, just emotionally, like forget financially, emotionally, you have to find out what is going on, because they bought your argument, they bought your thesis, they bought your promise, they have the budget, it wasn't too expensive. They chose you over a competitor, they invested all this time, and they said no. What did you do wrong? This is totally on you now, right? Now maybe they were confused, okay, but I'm being extreme a little bit, but to make the point. So then of course I go on to talk about there is a financial aspect that's very important as well, and then what shall I do about it? What are things we can do about it? So that's the chapter. But this tweet is just like this little microcosm of this feeling I have about it. And of course, you can say the same thing about other things in business. It's maybe especially funny or poignant or evocative to think about that. You might say pre-sales and onboarding sort of zone. Also, because we all do it all the time. I look at a product every day that I might want to buy, and then but my fingers hovering over the buy now button, and I'm like, yeah, like we all do that, and so like we can imagine the customers doing that because we do it for sure, and just like dude, press the buy button, just press it, it's so rare, and it's just funny like how much has to happen, and so it's easy to say like, well, that's just a funnel, and you're right, but I don't know, I think it is richer to think it to really have that perspective on. Yes, it's a funnel, but still.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, like, it's just funny to hear you talk about it, because like we went deep on that about 2 weeks ago on the show, talking about like ICP and exactly that. Like anytime I see a cancellation, we know like how churn rate works, and that it is a rate. There are always going to be people who do like it doesn't end up fitting. But yes, it's like the website did its job. The sign up form did its job. The onboarding did its job. And then still something, they were like, no, I changed my mind. Like, what? The other thing it really makes me think, like, just come back to is like, it just comes down to product. I hate just repeating like product market fit, right? But like all the little tactical things that you hear people talk about, like, oh, if you redesign your pricing page to show the higher price first instead of the middle and the lower price, and then maybe that's going to have a 4% increase in conversion rate. Like, okay, but like really, like what matters is like are you solving the problem? And if they have the problem, they're going to upgrade to the right plan that solves their problem. Like that's yeah, you don't want to like hide your buy button. You don't want to make it difficult to sign up, but like all the little tactical stuff, like it doesn't really matter. What actually matters is like make a product for a growing market and present it in a sane way,
Jordan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the word that comes to mind for me is demand, and just how strong the demand is and how strong you can make the demand or help it along to kind of get through all the obstacles. What the story that comes up for me is, when I first started online, I had an online store, and it was so hard to get visibility. We were using Volusion, first Yahoo stores, and then Volusion, great Austin company, I think, actually. And we wanted to get more insight. We were like, why is everyone leaving? Why are people not buying? So we added live chat software, and the live chat software was for chatting, but no one used the chat. But what it did is it showed us where people were. So we got a live view into the funnel. And it was the most emotional impact on us, because we would see people go from an ad to a product page, and then from the product page to a different product, which told us a little something. Then we'd see them go to the cart, and then we'd see them abandon. We'd be like, damn, almost we one step closer. Then we would see them go to the cart, and then the About Us page, and then abandon. Like, damn, what is that? Like, oh, they don't know us, they don't trust us.
They don't like your photo.
Yes, let's put we had a generic About Us page that told nothing. Then we put a picture of my two brothers and I who were running the business, and we explained who we were and what our values were. And then we would see product page, cart, about page, back to the cart, to the checkout, to finish. And we were like, oh my God, we have an impact on this. The emotions of the person on the other end, we have an impact on that. The trust, all these different things. So it's like the demand and the price. So these like very straightforward, like data points.
Yeah.
But what the brand, the feel, the reputation, the vibe, the demand that other people have for it, so you want to be part of that same cult, the fact that you want to identify as a type of person that buys this type, all these different things get mixed in with like the fundamentals of like what each step does. And then you realize, oh, I actually have a lot of control over this, so I shouldn't just be passive and, you know, wonder how amazing it is that people come through it, but you can lean into that and improve it.
I have something for that funnel if you want. Like
yes,
a little,
I'd love to hear it.
This is a thing that I had in the book, but I cut it for space.
Okay.
And therefore, this is an exclusive.
Oh,
Yes.
Here we go.
Exclusive.
So it's exactly what Brian and Jordan were getting at. Because Brian was talking about ICP and Jordan was talking about looking through the watching people and saying, wait a minute, there's stuff I could do here. Consider this. Let's say in your funnel I put nothing but the perfect best customers, like your ICP only is coming to the top of the funnel on the website. Even if your copy is just okay, but it just is talking to them essentially, like you're gonna be okay. People will still buy because they want it so bad, right? And if your sales team, if there is sales, is kind of bad, it's okay because like they kind of wanted to buy anyway, right? As long as they don't prevent the sale. In other words, even if you're bad at everything, if I only put ICPs in the top, you'll be okay. Now the opposite. I put nothing but garbage traffic.
Yeah.
Click fraud, whatever, right? Now I don't care how good your funnels are and your A/B testing, your sales team, like you're not going to get a lot of customers. What that tells you is the most important thing in the entire funnel is the quality entering the top of the funnel. We just said if the quality is great, it doesn't really matter. The rest of it doesn't matter. If the quality is bad, the rest of it doesn't matter. So, of course, I'm exaggerating when I say the rest doesn't matter. Of course it does, but I'm exaggerating to make the point that the first thing not even a step in the funnel, the stuff entering the funnel, the quality of that is more important than every other step combined. Once you understand that, you realize what Brian said. Go get your ICP, because that's what it means to have quality at the top. You'd rather have fewer clicks. Go ahead.
Well, if we're thinking about like new founders or people starting up today and deciding what business to go for, what market to go for, it's that question of who, right? Exactly that. Like I observe this all the time in SaaS founder friends who've been successful with their SaaS business. It's like in many of those cases, they've done a lot of things right. They work their asses off, but in many of those cases, I think they would also admit that like it worked despite their flaws, despite the subpar marketing site design or the product was half built and it's still sold like gangbusters, right? Like you just see that demand and the product market fit. And if you unpack that a layer further, or if you go earlier in their timeline, it's like, well, they chose correctly. They listened and observed the right signals and moved themselves into that direction to choose that ICP and build for them, right?
If you don't do that, but there's more to do. Like someone just said, oh, well then only get ICP leads. Of course, it's a vision statement, right? But what's different is right now you usually think about how do I A/B test and increase throughput through my site? But that's the wrong question if you know the first incoming stuff is more important. So for example, I'd rather have an ad that gets fewer clicks, but the clicks are of higher quality. But that's not how we normally think about ads. We just think click-through rate. I A/B tested this had more bigger click-through rate, so it's a better ad. False. It's if the ad is more opinionated and strong, and so it filters out more people and filters in the right people, and my overall click-through rate is lower as a result because it's filtering out the wrong people, that's a better ad. That's not how we normally think, but that would be how you took this information and apply it properly. Or another thing would be how you segment in whether it's Google ads or Facebook ads or okay, social media, other things, like how you segment the audience is really important. And again, it's better to have fewer leads that are more poignant. So here's another thing. If you don't do this, then your A/B testing in your website also optimizes for garbage, because most of the traffic to your site is garbage.
Yes.
And what do you do when you optimize a step in the funnel, like optimizing the pricing page conversion or optimize the homepage, even a landing page click to go on to the next page? What you do is you say, I'm trying to up the conversion rate. Right, but if 90% of the traffic is garbage, the only way to up that conversion rate in a material sense is to convert the garbage.
Mm-hmm.
If you convert that 10% and you grow from 10 to 11%, that's actually what you want to do. That's a 10% improvement. That's huge. But you'll never even be able to measure that. The end is too small. The only thing you can measure is if the shit traffic that you don't want is nevertheless fooled to continue.
Yeah.
Then the conversion rate of that step goes up. So that's what the A/B test will do. Just what you don't want. Again, this is assuming 90% is garbage, which again comes back to the top of the funnel. The more the top of the funnel is garbage, everything else is optimizing in the wrong direction, actually. So again, this is quite actionable. Of course, you can't just buy the best leads only, like, of course not, right? But it changes your mind about, like, well, what am I spending my time on? What am I optimizing for? How do I measure any of this? Another example is like, because of course you can't help but get a lot of weird traffic. Like, I mean, like in real life, okay, fine, but like in real life. So another thing is segmentation. Like, well, if you have a certain thing that's working really well and a lot of that traffic is good, you always want to segment those numbers off from the rest, so you don't pollute this good measurement channel or stream with the garbage, and that helps. Another one is if you can measure end to end more. So like if you're part of the fallacy here is measuring just one step, right? This landing page to this next click. That's too myopic. If you can measure all the way to the sale, which for simple products maybe you can, for complex ones you cannot. But let's just say the deeper you can measure into something useful, then it does work, because you can say, no, I'm not converting just the next step of the funnel. I'm measuring my conversion rate to the end of the funnel. If that goes up a little bit, yes, now you've done the right thing. Hooray. So expanding what do you mean convert? Convert to what? The deeper you can convert to what, the more now you really are measuring the thing you wanted to measure all along. And now your testing's working again, despite having garbage in the front, because now you're measuring against that garbage. So that's another technique. So in other words, there are very specific things you can do. Bam. Like those, there are some. So it's not just, so there is things you can do, but like, is that what you're focused on doing, or are you not doing all? Because if you're not doing all that, it's garbage time.
Jordan, go ahead.
I have a comment and then a question. This sounds very familiar because it's my problem, but it's not everyone's problem throughout the company, and including outside services like agencies, because only I am really thinking about it from, well, how much money do I have in the bank, and how much money am I spending on advertising, and how much money am I growing? Whereas others, like the advertising agencies, focused on their performance of the ads and the click-through and who's coming through and how much is being spent and what's the CPC and CAC and all that. And then the marketing team's looking at the marketing site, the landing pages and the messaging. And then the product team's looking at the onboarding. And then the development team's looking at the churn. I'm like, yeah, but I don't care about any of that. I just care about how much money I'm putting in, how much money I'm getting out. And that seems to be more difficult to measure, more difficult to track. It ends up being a lot of gut, a lot of like, oh, we're going in the wrong direction. This new ad campaign is actually not bringing in the right people because what's coming out the other end doesn't feel right. The question I have related to it is, you bring up advertising and ads in a lot of your examples. And one of the things that Brian and Justin and I talk about very often is the bootstrap community, the let's build a real business community, regardless of how you've raised money. They look down on ads and advertising as like this waste or very risky. And I just want to like double click on your always going back to advertising. Is that because it's measurable, or is that you think of that as like a default channel?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably 40 legitimate marketing channels that you can do, excluding like totally unique creative things, which is maybe the most interesting type. I think they just all have trade-offs. So like, Yes, I think that community says ads are bad, and the arguments that ads are bad are very good arguments. It's temporary. It costs money. You're not building an asset out of it. Whereas the idea is a social media channel or SEO build up, you're building an asset that pays off over time. It's free to do social media and write articles and do SEO. What I would say is sort of like how energy is conserved. None of these are free. That's obviously that the only way it's free is if your time is worth $0. But actually, your time is worth much more than what you would spend in ads. You'd say, yes, but I have time and I don't have money. And you say, aha, right, that's the point. It's not that it's free. It's that there's different forms of it, of stuff like time and money, right, and other things, energy. I don't know. You could list other things. It might be interesting to do that. And I don't think there's literally a law of conservation of energy among these. I'm just metaphorically speaking. If you have money and no time, ads are really good. If you have time and no money, you can't afford ads. So it's easy to just to post hoc justify that by saying ads are bad. Well, no, like you can't afford ads. Once you have money, you might try it, and then all of a sudden they're not so bad. So, so the good thing about ads is you get immediate feedback. Like you do AdWords, and like later that day, you know about which messagings work better. You cannot get that from SEO ever. But it's not an asset. SEO is. So all I would do is say, well, obviously there's all these different kinds of things, and they all have these pros and cons and timelines and different kinds of costs. So they're different. And also, I agree that there's some businesses where some channels will never be right. Right. And so, okay, cool. You might be surprised which ones those are, and you might not be surprised, So I agree with that too. So I feel like a lot of that is kind of post facto justification rather than actually understanding. But that's why when they have the arguments against advertising, they're correct. They're just not acknowledging the sort of totality that I just said, which is what I think reality actually is. And then that was the second thing you said, but there was a first thing before the ads.
Just the challenge of viewing the funnel from end to end as the founder,
right,
and
how the
managing
departments. Different departments are myopic. So here's a okay. Let's do another physics example. There's the like uncertainty principle. If the more you know about position, the less you know about momentum, and vice versa, or less you can be precise about, right? So to me, there are these in complex systems. There's, again, not literally, but like figurative analogies of this. And one of them is in the stuff like data and funnels, like you're talking about. So ideally, you might say everyone in the company would have the end-to-end funnel view. And although they may be working on, or they may have control over one set of mechanisms within that system, which is obviously true, they nevertheless are all optimizing across the whole system. That's what you would like. Because of course you want maximum throughput or quality, you might say, for the whole system. And then you have people who are specialized in different areas working on it. That's what you want. But you have this uncertainty problem, which is anything that's end-to-end has all these characteristics that make it very hard to operate. Like, it will take you a year to find out whether a new marketing source creates people who cancel more often than other people. And you can't speed that up because whether they cancel in 6 months takes 6 months. Like, there's nothing you can do to accelerate the pace at which you can find out whether someone's going to cancel in 6 months. You have to wait. And also, like, if it's a brand new channel, you probably need to give them chances to optimize a little bit. Like, you can't just declare, So that's why I say it might take a year, and there's nothing you can do. You can be smarter and less smart. You cannot make it faster than that. Well, people can't operate on a cycle, on a feedback cycle of a year. They have to have something faster. But those things that are faster are probably more localized and don't tell you the full picture. And so this is the uncertainty principle of metrics and timelines, you might say, right? So to me, it's like, okay, what do we do with that fact? And timeline is only one of many things to me about metrics that you might observe. So to me, it goes, okay, that means there's not one true metric. That's a stupid idea. We just explained why that doesn't work. Because you need different so you need different metrics for different things, different goals or operational or whatever. You need different ones. So the real question is, what's like the taxonomy of metrics that together tell me all the stuff I need to know? And we cannot think that a given metric will tell us things other than what it actually tells us. None of them will be the totality of what we want. And somehow a synthesis of all this is how we have to operate, even though we don't like it. Just like, sorry, you're just never going to know where the electron is and where it's in which direction it's going ever. But that doesn't mean you can't have some measurements and do some stuff. And that's what we're going to do. And so still, I would come back, I would still, it's still useful to me to do what you said, which I think is right, and come back and like, all right, everyone, let's keep our eye on the prize. The prize is overall optimization. Although we can't run our day-to-day based on that, comma, it is like, this is why I like vision statements. Vision statement is something like, you would like that to be the case. You're trying to do that. You may never even reach it ever, but like, at least it tells us what we are trying to do if we could. And that is still useful because it gives us like that. Anything that's more toward that is correct. Anything that's like to the side or away from it is not right. So I would use your statement as a vision statement rather than a mandate, an operational mandate, which is, we're trying to make it so that everything that comes in the top of the funnel is perfect, and people stay forever, and we're all trying to do that. We're trying to optimize for the whole funnel. Now, since none of us can day to day measure and do that, we will need things that as best we can tie into that vision. And we'll need to check in. Because we can measure that vision over a span of months. So we will. It's just that we know that, like, if we make a change today, we're not going to see that number change immediately. And even in 6 months, we may not, because it's multi-factor. So many different other things go into it. We still won't know. We just have to acknowledge that's true. But we can still measure the overall vision, which is the overall funnel thing, like you said. That we're still going to measure because that's what we're trying to do. We will have to use our wits and our intuition, and where we can, data. And sometimes we'll think of a slightly better metric that still doesn't solve the whole equation, but like, this one's better than before. And why did we even think of that in the first place? Because we had this whole thing in mind, and we were always trying to think, how do I get closer to that impossible ideal? And so the uncertainty principle says we can never know both at the same time with complete precision. The more we know about one, the less about the other. But there's still scenarios where we don't know about either one, and scenarios where we know a bit about both, just not in great detail. Like, there is better. Like, there's a limit. That doesn't mean there's not better and worse, like things. So, sure, there's a limit. We're never going to ask you all to have the perfect metrics, but that doesn't mean we can't be better if we keep in mind the prize. And so, I think that's the right. It's not a balance. It's simply like, let's keep the prize in mind. Let's have everyone thinking about that. Let's occasionally, like maybe quarterly, think, are there slightly better ways we could be getting at that, even if it's intuitive? Okay, but if you have that in mind, and your unconscious is like processing your life with that backdrop, your intuition might in fact have better things. So I'm okay with intuition as long as like we're sort of in what we believe is the right way as best we can.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to maybe dig into that some more. What I'm curious about, I think for a lot of people who followed your work over the years, you're such a clear thinker and writer, and you present ideas and arguments and theories like in such a clear sort of like clear-cut way, right? I'm wondering how that actually maps to your real on the ground experience, especially like if you can share any stories or anything from like the WP Engine years. Especially because if I think about WP Engine, it's in the WordPress space, which is like notoriously noisy, right? Like I would imagine that you have all these marketing funnels and optimizations that have evolved over the years, but then you have these spikes of noise, whether it's like news in the WordPress space, or maybe not even the word, just like randomness, right? Like, how do you as a founder, how have you like navigated that? How do you keep a head, like your head straight? How do you do it with your organization, your team? Like how do you go from like the clear cut theory in a blog post to here's how it plays out in the real world, Well, yeah. So I'll give you an example of the metrics. And yes, I do have an article. I think it's called KPIs or something, where I show my particular process of thinking about metrics. Like I just said, except I have a chart where it's very practical. Like, you can take this chart and actually make these metrics and keep it straight. So for example, that article came because I had this idea for years at WP Engine, and I refined it and used it with teams over and over again, and refined it until it seemed to just work without having to be changed all the time, like each time. Then I was like, all right, yeah, that's it. And I was like, all right, this is my framework. Again, framework, you have to be careful. Like, you can't
a lot of frameworks do work for one org and then not the other, just culturally another reason. So I'm not pretending like this is the universal thing that always works. It just worked for us really well. So, take it for what it is. Anyway, so I took what's in there, quite literally sent the article, just as an example, with the data team, which meaning the internal corporate data team at WP Engine. And they were sort of rethinking how to do all their work and what tools they're using and what metrics they should use. So we used exactly this article. In fact, I think the article was already published at the time. So it's literally using this article. And it was like, it was interesting. All the metrics on the data team were things like, are we syncing from this source to that source? Is the sync broken? How would we know that? What are these timeframes? And that's all true. Those are all good operational metrics for the team itself of like, is their own work and own systems doing whatever the team wanted it to do, right? Very team centric. But to your point, like those are the easier ones because it's your stuff. What about the customer? Now, in the case of the data team, the customer is the rest of the company, especially the other data analysts in the rest of the company, but even other people too. That's their customer. And they had no metrics and no conception about their customer. So I would say things like, so they would do things like, oh, so-and-so in this other department's mad at us because I don't know, we didn't work on this thing that they need, but it was really urgent. We didn't have the time. So in other words, they're talking about normal product development and client work, And but since it's all within the company, like we can do whatever we want with it, which is a nice kind of microcosm. And so I was like, well, so we were talking about this, and like I don't even know what metrics we would use to say like, did we deliver something? Because like we may or may not be able to do any one task in any one sprint. So like that, I don't even know what a metric would be. And I said, okay, well, just take a step back and ask, and this gets back to the vision. Just if you imagine like, if just never mind our tech and how we do it, but like our customers, all these people in the company, what would it look like if we were like just the best ever and just crushing it for our customers? What would that look like? This is, of course, what the vision statement is. It's describe what the future looks like if we're crushing it, right?
Yeah.
Or what we look like if we're crushing it. And they're like, well, I don't know. They get back to the numbers. I'm like, no, not numbers. Just like without numbers. what would, and just like, they would just, I don't know, like, I guess if you just talk to any of them, they would be happy with us. And then like, yeah, I agree. Like if they all said it's awesome working with the data team, then that would be success.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, but we don't know what's awesome. We don't like, oh, I know. They may not even know. But like you just said it. You just put a vision statement that you want everyone to. And so how could we start to, in fact, measure it very poorly? Like intentionally measure it poorly. Like I know it's hard. Like how would we measure this even poorly? Well, we could give them like a really dumb survey, really basic survey, not NPS, of course, because they're not referring us to a friend. Anyway, I hate NPS, but like just a basic survey about how they feel with it, like a big fill-in box so they can just type shit. And we could just send that every month to 20 of our so-called customers.
I love how like so many of your ideas start with like just start with the ideal. Let's work backwards from that. What needs to be true and what needs to be true.
So they did. And the first thing that was interesting is it wasn't as bad as they thought, which makes sense because like if you deliver data to another person and it's just what they want, often what happens is nothing. They just use it. Right? So you have no positive feedback. Occasionally you do, but usually people are like, oh, thanks for that, right? But a lot of times if you're doing your job well in data or security or web hosting, if you do your job well, you're invisible, then that's a good thing. Like, hooray, I didn't think about my website performance today. Right, that's good. But that means you're not getting the positive feedback. So when you do get feedback is when people are upset and they're like, the website's down, whatever. And you're like, so that's all you see. So your perception is there's problems all the time because there are problems all the time. It's just that you're not seeing how that's counterbalanced by when there's not. So first of all, it wasn't as bad, which was a morale boost because they kind of felt like maybe people were upset with them. And it was like, oh, no, they're actually fundamentally not upset with us. They just want certain things. Also, just the fact that they were curious about whether their customers were happy or not made their customers like go, oh, that's good. And all of a sudden they were more constructive in their feedback. Oh, you actually want to improve. Oh, well, it's easier to be nicer in that case, more understanding than if you think that maybe your feedback's not being heard, even if it is being heard, but you think it's not. So the whole dynamics changed to be better right off the bat. And then, of course, they did look at this and they did blah, blah, blah. And the scores came up over time. And what's funny is both parties knew, like, we know this is a score you're using, and I know you know that I know, right? And yet it was still useful because it was a way to just communicate about this thing. It's sort of almost an excuse. And then they started meeting more often with the customers about what they needed. And even when they said no, 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 if they explained why, the customer was happier. So see, it's not necessarily that they needed higher throughput, but if they just explained themselves, that would also make the customer happy if the customer didn't get what they wanted. And they were like, oh, all we have to do is just explain it. I can do that. I'm like, yeah, I know you can. This just made you think of it because it's a number on a board somewhere, you know, a number that you and I know is gamed and not even that accurate. So,
Yeah.
but just it's causing us to act in a better way anyway, because we said what we wanted and then we sort of, you know, made a little something or other that made us act that way. So the number itself is sort of irrelevant, and even the questionnaire is sort of irrelevant. All these secondary effects is what's relevant, and it worked. So that's just so I know you asked about external things, but what I think is interesting about this is how little it took to work and how actually not that meaningful the metric was for it to be useful. And we're all honest about that. If
It's
someone
really
in
just
the
like
corner,
a mechanism to get the team talking and observing these things, right?
right now, if some VP somewhere thinks that number is more than what I just said, that's bad. If they're like bonusing you based on this number, now you just broke it because you're interpreting it as more than what it is, and right. But as long as we're allowed, you might say, to use it in just the way that it is, no more, no less. Oh my gosh, it's so great, right? And of course, the smaller the company is, the more you can enforce that because there's not so much chaos to rein in. But the fact that we controlled the whole environment because we were we WP Engine were also the customer. So that allowed us to control. So it's a much more controlled experiment, you might say, because to your point, there's things that could happen externally. We do it, but how do we really know? There's so many factors that go into that end up into maybe cancellation rate or growth or whatever. It's just very hard to pinpoint what is it that we thought or said or did affect that. Whereas in this microcosm, I just said it was more clear. Such a smaller system, totally controlled. So it's easier to see it in effect and see how it does work. It is helpful. So that's why I thought it was an interesting example.
That's great.
I'm very grateful that we addressed the danger of overemphasizing data.
Oh yeah.
And the word allowance that you used, I feel like that's my communication strategy with my team, is to say, you can come to me with data, but I'm also allowed to say, great, that's one part of the picture. That's not like the end all be all of what this means, and you need to be okay with that, and here's why.
I would go beyond that. Not only are you allowed to, you must not think that data is the only answer, or even that the data is always right. Like, are the data points collected even right? We're not sure. Are we interpreting it correctly? We're not sure. We're using stats. Are those the right stats? We're not sure. Is this the full picture?
One factor.
Certainly not. It is certainly not the whole picture. We know that definitely. We just don't know exactly how much.
People want it to be definitive. They want it to be accurate.
It's definitely not. And the people bringing you the metrics are also should not be bringing you those metrics as if that's the definitive. They should say, and yet, despite these metrics, we think, and that's good. So metrics should be informative, but never decisive.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Informative, but not decisive.
There's so many great moments in this. Thanks again, Jason. Thanks to everyone in the chat that showed up. We had some great discussion. There was so many things the chat brought up, and I'd love to have Jason back and talk more about ICP, especially how do we get more of our ICP in our funnel. So we'll have to have Jason come back. Everybody go to pre-order. Jason didn't tell me to say this. Go to preorder.hiddenmultipliers.com and get all of Jason's wisdom on this particular topic in one condensed little package. Why wouldn't you do that? That's going to be the best $24.95 you ever spend. So go check that out. I've pre-ordered, and thanks, Brian and Jordan. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, this is fun.
Bye.
All right. See ya.